Owensville, Illinois, back in the 1980s, 1990s-ish, two sisters lived there by the name of Sandra and Josie. Sandra and Josie had the same father. His name was Joe, and they all lived in the same house. Sandra, being the oldest, she became the caretaker of her younger siblings. Josie, her little sister, was actually 4 years younger than her, and Sandra was described as very responsible. She did most of the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, helping with homework, and just took on that caretaker, motherish role. It is also said there was a lot of that went on in the home, many types of abuse. But nevertheless, Sandra, being the responsible one, took care of the kids, played the motherly role. She went to school. She finished school. She wanted to be a certified nurse's assistant. She was doing really good at that, balancing her school as well as taking care of the kids. Josie was completely opposite. Josie was 16 years old in high school, honey. She was very popular, outgoing, all about her friends, always had different boyfriends, getting in trouble, sneaking out, trying to sneak people in, and to avoid her father. So Sandra, being the mother-like figure to Josie, was always just trying to help Josie, keep Josie on the right track. But Josie's 16 years old. She was going to do what she wanted to do, honey. Sandra, she met this guy named Everett that she just loved. He was a good guy. He worked really hard. He loved Sandra. And Sandra wanted to have a baby. She wanted to settle down with him. She wanted to have a family of her own. And they tried, and all these different things kept happening. Like she would not get pregnant, or she would have, unfortunately, a miscarriage. And she just felt so hopeless. You can only imagine her shock when her 16-year-old little sister Josie came home and said that she was pregnant. Sandra, in her mind, is like, this is really unfair, but nevertheless, she continued to help her sister and encourage her sister while she was pregnant. Eventually, Sandra moved out of the home and moved into her own place with Everett and was still trying to build her own family. In 1997, Josie went into labor and gave birth to a healthy baby boy that she named Jordan. Josie was still a teenager. She was still in high school. She wanted to go out and have fun. Eventually, Josie started taking her baby there to Sandra's house and hanging out with her boyfriend Everett and her big sister Sandra. And she would try to sneak out and go out and party and just live the teenage life. Now, at this point, Sandra was working as a CNA. She was making good money. Her boyfriend Everett was making good money, and they are still trying to have a baby. Of course, Sandra's getting irritated with her little sister Josie, but she also realizes, what can she do about it? She's a teenager. She's a baby who had a baby, and this is just what her life is. Eventually, Josie met this guy named Chester at a Taco Bell. She thought he was so cute. Chester really liked her, and they got into a relationship. Even though they were in this relationship, Josie still kept going over to Sandra's house. It was actually rumored in the family that Josie was really warming up to Sandra's boyfriend. There was even rumors in the family that they may have been sleeping together, and that Josie would go over to Sandra's house and hang out with her boyfriend whenever Sandra wasn't there. And even though it made Sandra very uncomfortable, that was her little sister, and she tried to just trust her boyfriend and trust her sister. But nevertheless, the family was still whispering. All the while, Sandra, working as a CNA with her boyfriend Everett, trying to settle down, wanting to have a baby of her own and start her own family, and it just wasn't happening for her. She would finally get pregnant, and then she would lose the baby, or she would think she was pregnant and then she would not be pregnant, and it was just beginning to wear her down. Right around this time, Josie announces to the family that she is pregnant again. She's about 17-ish at this time. She is still in high school. She is getting ready to go in and be a senior, and Sandra, this is like a devastating blow to her. I can't have my baby. I've taken care of my brothers and sisters my whole life. I'm a CNA. I'm now helping taking care of other people. Like, I'm doing everything right, and it is just not happening for me. Like, Sandra was devastated. And then on top of it, the family started spreading rumors that this baby that Josie had could possibly be Everett's baby. She was struggling. Not long after Josie announced that she was pregnant, Sandra announced that she was pregnant. Finally, she's finally pregnant. She started eating more, and Everett was all excited. He was finally going to have this baby, and this Chester guy that Josie was with was super excited that he was finally going to have his own baby with Josie. And they were just two pregnant sisters. They were going out to eat together. They were rubbing their bellies together. They were going to have a baby within a few months of each other, and Sandra just seemed to be on top of the world, and Josie seemed to be on top of the world as well. In August of 1999, Josie went into the hospital and delivered delivered a healthy baby boy whom she named Jasper. She went home with all of her stuff. She had her son there. Chester went off to work. And within 30 minutes of her getting home, Sandra showed up. She was so excited. Sandra packed up her sister Josie and her 2 kids, put them in the car, and drove off with them to spend time together. Later that evening, when Everett came home from work, he walked into his home that he shared with Sandra to see his pregnant girlfriend, and he was surprised. Sandra was standing there holding a newborn baby. And Everett said, "Whose baby is that?" And Sandra said, "This is our baby. I had the baby today." And he was so confused because he's like, "Wait a minute, you what? You had the baby without me? Like, why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I called?" Sandra told her boyfriend Everett that when she went to the doctor for her doctor's appointment that day, that she just gave birth right there, and that the baby just came. It was a healthy baby boy, and congratulations, we had a baby boy. Everett, being excited but still kind of disappointed and confused, accepted that, but he said, "Why is Josie's son here?" Because Josie's 2-year-old little boy was there. And then that's when Sandra said, "Josie came over earlier. She dropped him off and went and spent the day with Chester." So he said, "Okay." Later that day, Sandra took her sister Josie's 2-year-old son and dropped him off at the Merrified home where their parents are, and told them that Josie had went to hang out with Chester and that she would be back to get her son later. Right around this time, Everett went to the store to go get newborn formula and stuff, because at this point, he wasn't expecting Sandra to have her baby for another like 3 weeks to a month or maybe even more. So he's at the store getting the stuff, and he would later say in an interview that he had this pit in his stomach. He felt like something was just not right, but he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to put his finger on it. Right around this time, while he was out shopping, somebody from Sandra's family approached him and said, "Hey, have you seen Josie?" And he said, "Yeah, she's with Chester. We dropped the 2-year-old off at her parents' house." They said, "No, she's not with Chester. Chester's looking for her. Chester hasn't seen her in a day or so, or the baby." This is when Everett said his heart sank. He knew something wasn't right. He hurried home, walked into the house where Sandra was holding the newborn baby, and he said, "Where did this baby come from? Where is your sister?" Sandra looked up at him and said, "Josie isn't coming back." He loaded Sandra up in the car with the newborn baby and took them down to the police station. Sandra basically wouldn't tell the cops anything. He just said, "Oh, she's not coming back." And then eventually, as they questioned her, she said that she did not know if Josie was alive or dead. "She's at this park. She's at this area." And the cops were like, "You need to take us to her right now." Sandra leads the cops to where Josie's body is. When the cops get there, Josie's body is laying face down in a little bit of water in this like parkish area, and they knew right away that she was dead. There was a rock that had blood on it, and she had been laying face down for however long. While Sandra was being questioned, she told the investigators that when they were in the car, Josie and Sandra got into an argument about who the father was of the new baby. She said that once they got into this argument, she completely blacked out. The next thing she knows, she came to, she had a rock in her hand, and Josie was laying down and she had blood on her. She took the baby and she went back to the house. Autopsy would later show that Josie did not die from the rock, that the rock actually just knocked her unconscious, and when she fell into the water face down, she drowned. During the time that they were questioning Sandra, Everett was like, "Okay, but she was pregnant. Where is our baby at?" At first, Sandra started telling the cops that she had delivered the baby that same day in the woods, and it was a stillborn, and that she buried the baby's body. Well, the cops took her back out there again. They searched the whole entire place. Not only did they not find a baby, but they found no evidence that she delivered a baby. So then Sandra finally admitted that she was never pregnant at all. She was charged with first-degree murder and went to trial. She had many psychological evaluations and was later deemed to have had postpartum psychosis, and she also had like dissociation or dissociative disorder from all of the that she suffered as a child. She later took a plea deal for second-degree murder and only got sentenced to 8 years for this, and then ended up only serving 7 and then was released, and she's actually free right now. Jasper, the one that was 1 day old whenever his mother was murdered by his aunt, Jasper sat down with the camera and said that he grew up mentally, physically, emotionally, and that he felt like basically like his life was snatched from him, and that he thought that he possibly could have had a good childhood had his mother not been killed.